What's up, everybody? This is your man Cam. It is Blerdlines. We are back with another edition. With me, as always, is
the guy with the most, Cam Bigelow,
as well as
Big Josh.
And bringing up the rear is
the professor. It's that start of the semester again. It's time for everybody to learn, I guess.
And we're back talking Dune Prophecy. It had 6 episodes in and out and wrapped. Didn't really get a chance to get it since we have 2 deep in the Dune lore folks with us. We definitely wanted to chit chat about it really quick. I don't even think it was be that long, but I definitely wanted to get your guys' take on it because I know it wasn't. It kind of is and it isn't Dune canon because it's his son's. It's based off a lot of his son's work, not necessarily his stuff. So there's a little discrepancies there. So there's some things where I'm like, I watched maybe 3 episodes of it, and I can see the production value was freaking amazing, but a lot of the story points and other things, I was kind of like, it's not grabbing me as the other ones did. But I wanted to hear what you guys had to say more about it.
Well, let me ask you this. Why didn't it grab you? Are you familiar with... You watched the movie, but you haven't read the book, right?
I read the book, but not for over 20 years. So that's why I should have done what you did and should have just read the book again just after the movies came out, but I didn't.
So you watched both movies, though?
Yes.
Okay, and you read the book a long time ago, but you said despite your familiarity with it, the show Dune Prophecy didn't grab you.
Yeah, it didn't grab me. I don't know what it was. I mean, it still was interesting enough, but it wasn't like I felt like I was compelled to watch every next episode. Like I was kind of like, oh, I can watch it. After I got to 3, I kind of forgot about it. And I was like, oh crap, it's almost at the end already. And then I was like, we'll probably do a podcast about it. And you guys will fill in the gap. So I'm not entirely sure what didn't get me, but I went past the first episode at the very least, but I think by 2, 3, I was just kind of like, it's almost like I'm starting to drift off. Especially when we have heady sci-fi stuff, I like to stop what I'm doing and really pay attention. But for some reason, this one just didn't get me like other things like that. Like something like The Expanse, which is also a slow moving, very deliberate plot. But I was engrossed in it every episode, even when there was no action, no nothing. I was still like, wait, what the heck's going on? These characters, I kept with it. Where I think Dune by episodes 3, I started to trail off and I just never went back. Now that might be on me. I need to go back and read 4, 5, and 6, watch 4, 5, and 6. But I noticed that for myself that, and I was kind of asking just, people that are non-sci-fi people and if they're watching it or not, and if they kept them. And I think a lot of them kind of trailed off probably 1 or 2 episodes, but I'd rather come back and go okay, folks that's deep in the Dune lore, especially more familiar, more recent, what was their take on it like that?
Yeah, I would say if you're not familiar with Dune, maybe this is a tough sell. However, what intrigued me, because I'm not going to read everything Dune related, but I'm in the pen, and Josh and D'Angelo can correct me. I still don't know, even if reading the first book, Dune by Frank Herbert, I don't know enough about the Bene Gesserit. And I think this was an opportunity for someone to take the reins and give us a backstory. You mentioned it wasn't canon, but I think there's part of me that says, why not? This cannot be canon, right? Like if the son is writing this or spearheading this, then I would look at this as an extension of Dune lore. And I had questions about why do certain characters look a certain way opposed to the film. And maybe I was going to get some answers or some type of story behind that. And I'm taking it for face value because it's an opportunity to talk about the Bene Gesserit and how they came up and how they made their footprint in the Dune lore. So that's what the part that intrigued me. As far as what I've heard offline was the story was a little slow. Well, that just goes with world building. Yes, there is a point where, the pace has to pick up. But I was okay with this because I feel like for 6 episodes, you can't push too much into 6 episodes. And I think each episode is an hour, maybe some hour and change, if I'm not mistaken. And we're just getting an explanation of what's going down and how it's going to go forward. So I'm okay with it. It's season 2 is probably going to speed things up a little bit and give us some more background and of what's going on. But I did have some issues with some of the characters. We can get into that later. But I was just trying to understand why it didn't capture you. Because when you said earlier too, I was going to correct you and say there are 2.5 experts. I am the newbie in Dune lore, so it's fresh from my mind. So I'm still eager to learn about Frank Herbert's world, because my other two co-hosts, they know more about it than I do, and they have the building blocks and the foresight to know what potentially might happen in the future. Whereas I'm just like, oh, okay, now I get better understanding. But they can also guide me. It's like, I wouldn't expect too much from this character, et cetera, et cetera. So I was just curious on why it didn't gravitate towards you, even though you have some familiarity with it. Like, again, I was coming not fresh. I know about Dune. I watched the 2 recent movies. I know about the David Lynch, rest in peace, version. But I never really watched it. I never watched any of the miniseries. But after watching this movie, I was like, yeah, there's something missing. I want to read the book to get a better understanding of this world, which I have. And now it's gotten me more intrigued to learn about the Bene Gesserit. So,
yeah. And then, so D, you're a lot more well versed into the world and all the world building. The one thing I will say is when I watched it, I did like that aspect of it, of expanding the world more of what we knew, right? This is kind of the thing that House of the Dragon did with Game of Thrones, right? You got a quote unquote prequel, so you get to hear or you get to see things that you've maybe read about or only heard a little bit about, and now it's expanding that. That's the one part of it for Dune Prophecy that I liked. I like to see, like you said, they got to expand on these little pieces that we only got to hear a little bit here and there, and now we're seeing this whole world more fleshed out. That part was awesome. But for D, what was your take on this recent 6 episodes?
So just talking about addressing some of the things that were said. So it is canon in that, as you noted, it's tethered to Frank Herbert's Dune universe. So, and it's a prequel trilogy. So it's based on Great Schools of Dune, which was written by Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson. And it's a sequel to Legends of Dune, which they published in between 2002 and 2004. And so what the main aspect of the storytelling are where they pull from Herbert's notes and his appendices and expanded a lot more is regarding those 4 institutions that are the power circles of Dune. So the Bene Gesserit, the Mentat, and the Sook schools, which are, if you saw the one, they're the doctors that have the little diamonds on their forehead, and then the Spacing Guild. So they're all sort of struggling at this period of time. And they're threatened by the independent anti-technology forces that came from the Butlerian Jihad. That's why you saw in that first episode, there was such a visceral reaction to the child having the thinking machine, as they call it. But what I thought about those 6 episodes is that right now I could immediately sense, going back to something that Cam said, that this isn't a story that's taken directly from Herbert as much as it is something from one of his larger ideas or concepts that's found in the appendixes or notes they expand upon. So I think it definitely can be taken as canon. I don't know if I'm enjoying the execution. Very quickly, we don't really get a lot of context of how the voice is developed. It's kind of just thrown in there, and not really. There's a missed opportunity, I thought, to really focus in on the sort of philosophical, the negotiation of philosophy and science that Herbert's Dune story was so popular for, and well known for having well known for those stories. So I thought it wasn't boring. I didn't dislike it. I thought there were moments where it felt like there is a tether to Denis Villeneuve's films, you know, but I don't know if it's doing a good job of tethering to the Dune universe or mythology that was set forth by Herbert. Now, having said that, there is a lot of room, and they didn't try to do too much at first, and so there's a lot of room for it to grow and to be to impress me more. Right now, I'm not that impressed, but I'm not turned away either. I think there's a lot of potential. I enjoyed the performances. I did not understand how they were depicting certain things and why they showed it that way. Specifically, House Atreides. I did not understand why House Atreides. I didn't get what was going on. I didn't understand how they could be lured in such uh, a stupid way and be killed in such an easy way. The way that not is it not the main one is what Valia, and then it's Tula.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, the younger sister and her assassination of the Atreides. I thought that twist could have been a little bit. It's in the execution that I'm having a problem with. It's not the content. It's in the execution that I had a problem with. So I don't know. We'll see where it goes. But right now, I don't know where to put it.
Yeah. And then Josh, what was your take on it?
Much the same like D'Angelo. I felt like it was good. It was good enough, but it wasn't. It could have been great, especially in sort of laying out certain aspects of how the story is told. But this is kind of the thing that I get the sense permeates a lot of the Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson novelizations. That's why I didn't gravitate towards those. Like I kind of stayed with the mainline Frank Herbert books. That said, I think mostly, with some notable exceptions, like what D'Angelo pointed out, with the development of the voice and a couple other things, like like the murder of House Atreides at the beginning, as told in backstory. I think some of those things could have been fleshed out a good deal more. But that said, I think they're still doing a reasonable job. Like I said, good enough. It's not great. It's not bad. It's good enough. It's enough. There's enough meat on the bone for me to go back to it and watch it, and watch season 2. There were some eye-popping moments for all the other things, for all the lack of fleshing out in certain aspects. There are other aspects of it that I felt like did a good enough job, that I'd go back and watch. I'll go back. I'm here for season 2 for sure. Emily Watson in particular is doing a fabulous job with what she's been given. What's the other guy's name? Travis Fimmel is just, I haven't seen him in a lot of other stuff, but that dude is a revelation. He is really, really killing it as Desmond, man. He really, really, he's nailing it. But as far as, like D'Angelo said, it is canon in that it is sort of a prequel to the Denis Villeneuve universe of that angle, that sort of pathway of the storytelling, the movie, the visual media aspect of it. It's canon in that pathway. It's not necessarily considered canon as far as like the book world is concerned. And I think those are two distinctions we need to make.
I agree.
That said, like I said, it was good enough. But I think it's plagued by a lot of the same things that plague the Brian Herbert, Kevin J. Anderson. And I like Kevin, particularly I'm a fan of a lot of Kevin J. Anderson's Star Wars work as far as novelization is concerned. He's a good author. He's not the higher echelon. He's not like a Timothy Zahn or the like, in terms of Star Wars authors, but he's a serviceable, he's a better than serviceable author when given material to sort of run with. And I think this is that. Just, again, I think he's constricted by the fact that they're working from a lot of annotation and glossary.
Someone else's notes.
Yeah.
Basically.
So I think they're I don't know if they're just hamstrung or it's a limitation of how, Brian Herbert being sort of the keeper of the scrolls, as it were. I'm not sure if it's just, him sort of narrowing the scope and the focus of how they do what they do, or if it's just, I don't know what it is, but there are definitely flashes of the things that make me not want to really delve into their novelizations of the continued universe.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because also this is one of those things where, we talk about all the novelizations of different IPs after the big stuff that happens, right? All the movies happen, and there's comics, there's novels, all that kind of stuff. We already talked about the RIP to the Star Wars extended novel universe that essentially got kaput after Disney took over. But that was an example of a really good way to do it because they literally were like, hey, here's a sandbox. Writers, do your thing. And they added and injected a lot of life into it that that George probably would never even thought of, which is awesome. And so I think
to be fair, with Herbert, Herbert's like Tolkien, right? So his development of his story and his mythology was tied to a greater scope theme that or set of themes and aesthetics that translated to the storytelling. So if you notice, Dune doesn't have a lot of recognizable science in it, even though we call it science fiction, but there is a presence of science and technology, but it's more focused on the philosophical sort of understandings or various schools of philosophy when considering how humans engage with technology and the advancements of technology. And the idea of evolution versus stagnation and things like that. Herbert used a lot of his story pathways to really challenge that, or to to make it so because he said in the interview, his whole point, the reason he ended up having to write Dune Messiah and even the subsequent novels is because he felt that people misinterpreted his point with Paul Atreides, that he felt that because that ends with Paul sort of being unambiguously victorious, that the wrong message was received. In his mind, Paul is the problem as much as he is a part of any solution. Paul's pathway to leading a holy war is sort of his point, which is even in under their best intentions, leaders sometimes end up taking us down really horrible and dark paths. And so I didn't feel that in Dune Prophecy storytelling, where there's a greater scope connection to those schools of philosophy that Herbert did so well, infusing in his characters. The Harkonnens, they're repulsive in manner and in appearance, to sort of stand as a metaphor for what untapped, untold wealth and privilege does to the human over generations.
Yeah. Josh?
Yeah.
And to piggyback on what D'Angelo was just saying, the whole point of Paul's ascendancy is, at least as far as for the angle that Frank Herbert was originally pursuing, was to sort of be wary, was to tell a story that basically, at least as far as Paul is concerned, is to be wary of charismatic leaders.
Yes.
Even with them being well-meaning, even with them giving you what you want as a constituent, you still need to be wary of them because there's always another side to what they're looking for, what they're angling for, what their ultimate end game is, any number of things. So just be wary, just be mindful. And again, like D'Angelo said, you don't really get the sense, and I mean, I don't think you're gonna get the sense. Not as I'm saying it out loud, I don't think you're necessarily gonna get the sense that that's where the story is angling, because this is all telling the origin story of the Bene Gesserit, and so in that regard, all they know is that they need to bring it about. They don't know that they're not fully aware of the golden path, at least not at this point, and I don't think they're fully aware of what will come, what they get, once they get what they're seeking.
So also, Josh just referred to the Golden Path, which is from Herbert's. The discussion of that starts in the third book, Children of Dune, with Leto Atreides, Paul's son. Yeah, Leto II, Paul's second son. Incidentally, the movies cut out the fact that Paul and Chani had one son that was murdered when on the attack on Sietch Tabla. But they don't have a kid in the movies. But in the books, they had one who's murdered, and then their second child actually goes on to rule the known universe as the God Emperor. So that's the fourth book, the God Emperor of Dune. But he sees this what's called Golden Path, and what's revealed is that is the path that Paul was trying to avoid at all costs. He was trying to avoid that path, and there's it's hard to describe in a way that I think it's quick, fast, and resonates without more context. But I think the whole point is that you can kind of see how, again, the source material that they're pulling from for Dune Prophecy is not as strong as what Denis Villeneuve is pulling from in terms of the Dune universe. You can feel that with the storytelling. Even though it's not bad. I'm just like Josh said, I'm interested to see where things go with season 2. I thought all of the performances were pretty solid, but there were some things that I thought just were missing execution wise. Glossing over the thinking machine war and not acknowledging the Butlerian jihad and who were the Butlerians and why they were different from the rest of the Landsgrad and things like that.
You don't think they touched on it enough in sort of the prologue of the first episode? Because they didn't tell you who the butlers were, sure. But to me, it felt like they gave you just enough to go into the next thing. But
I don't think they get
right. The combination of how they explain the Butlerian War, the Butlerian Jihad, and then the formation of the Bene Gesserit in the wake of that. Yeah, you're right. That is a little,
because you got to remember that the Butlerian Jihad was a big deal because there was not another like its kind until the Fremen Jihad, led by Paul Atreides.
Sure.
So to me, you have to show how that we go from they were slaves or under control by these machines, these matrix-like machines, thinking machines, to this Landsgrad with all these powerful, wealthy houses that control and govern and steward these planets.
Right.
I just think that there was a little bit of a disconnect and maybe a missed opportunity. It's not necessarily going to hurt it, but I just felt that showing that transformation or the difference of why society is different. The only thing we see now is that they don't have full control over Arrakis, and that the Harkonnens aren't at the center of power. They're actually very low. But we don't know what House Atreides' standing is. We know that there was one of them that's a hero.
Right.
But we don't know where they are politically in this whole grand scheme of things. And for Harkonnens not to be trusted, people certainly bring them into the fold real easy.
Yeah, and Cam, what you said?
I was going to say this has been a common theme amongst the two films I watched and this series, and you guys can attest more to this if this is true. But Dune is just an example of why you should read the novels.
Yeah.
There's always a case for a lot of things that have been adapted from novels or books, whatever. But Dune is really one of those, like, even after watching a person's best effort, you still probably should go read the original source material because there's just things just left out. But again, I don't think Dune Prophecy suffers too much from this. There are some elements, but there could be some, like I said, the voice. How the heck did they come about that? And I remember there was a line Valia had said, she was like, I can teach you. Well, teach us. Show us. Like,
yeah,
I'm curious.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
So
yeah, show don't tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say the same because like I think that's another thing I'll go back and finish it up, but I felt like there was something missing. Like it was like things mentioned, but not necessarily thought out. So I was kind of like, what is that? That looked interesting. Oh wait, we're already moving past it. Well, what's going on here? Like, I got that sense.
They kind of halfway double back to it at some point, but even with the double back to it, they don't fully flesh. I won't spoil it for you, but even when they double back to it, they don't fully flesh it out. So it is weird because it's like it has flaws, but it's still good somehow. Like it's got glaring flaws. That's the weird bit.
You know what?
Because the thing with the voice is that and this is why I said missing from Herbert's storytelling. When in the book, when Jessica and Paul both drink the water of life and they have to transmute that poison, he describes it in great detail of what's happening, but not in a way that is entirely scientific. He describes it in a way that is a blend of science and philosophy and religion and every element or almost every corner of the human consciousness and the way that we govern ourselves and the way that we associate with reality in some way or shape or form is used to describe how they're transmuting that poison into the benefit of their blood so that they become something new. My point being is that even in the voice, there could have been a moment that showed. I would have rather them showing Mother, was it Raquella, developing the voice with Valia and perhaps the two of them working on it. But the fact that this person, she just comes out of nowhere. Okay, she's evolved into, I get it. See, and that's the thing. They try to connect it to evolution, which is very Herbert, because that's the whole thing. Mentats evolved so that they didn't need thinking machines. The human mentats pushed themselves so that they would be able to open up pathways in their mind to that the human brain, and he gets that from a lot of scientific writings that suggest that the human brain has a lot of untapped potential. And so that's what mentats are. The reason they can calculate something, you saw it in the first Dune, part 1, when Duke Leto asks Thufir, how much did this cost the Emperor to send this herald here? And his eyes like kind of roll up, and then he goes and he gives them the exact number. That's because they evolved to not need thinking machines. That's the whole point of the mentats. Same with the Bene Gesserit. That aspect of humanity that evolved that did not need to rely on machines. Now, instead of hooking a human up to a machine and having them figure out if they're telling the truth, you have this person, this human, sit there and watch you, and and without a doubt, just by judging the chemical responses to your body, they know whether you're lying or telling the truth. And then, that's evolution, but from a philosophical perspective.
So now, to bring it a full circle, like all of you guys said, you guys are tapped in for the season 2. Beyond like execution, I had to double check it because I was wondering who the showrunner was. Showrunner had previous credits on Fringe, was the executive producer of Altered Carbon season 2, was also at Westworld, not the good seasons. But so showrunner definitely got chops. And like I said, from the scale and production of it, like in terms of what I saw, was amazing. And I think now, like these quibbles and these little parts of it, going back to people that actually know more of the lore, and going back to what Cam said about this is one of those things where you're interested enough that this will probably make you read the source material. Another thing that gave me that same feeling is my well-known beef with Akira, because I watched the Akira movie and I was like, this is visually amazing. I have no idea what's going on. Then I read the books and I understood exactly what's going on. And I think this is one of those ones where I think, the source material is super important to what you're watching. And if nothing else, I think people will go back, or the ones that, take that time in, because, folks don't read these days.
Well, and I think it's a couple of things going on. One, it seems like this is endemic of all the complaints that I hear people have of reading the Kevin J. Anderson, Brian Herbert efforts post Herbert's passing. One, and then two, I think this was something that D'Angelo said when he read the book, because he's of us. I would say Cam and D'Angelo are the most recent readers of the books. I read it probably the same time you did, Cam, like 20 years ago. But I think it was D'Angelo who said, either Frank Herbert was incredibly high when he wrote the book, or he's a bloody genius. And it's probably a little bit of both. But in order to capture that lightning in a bottle, you gotta you have to make some bold moves and some bold writing choices. And again, no disrespect to Kevin J. Anderson, I've read all of his Star Wars books and I love them dearly, but I don't think the combination of him and Brian Herbert make that guy. You know what I mean? Like they don't. I haven't heard anybody say, "Yo, you have to read Chapter House Harkonnen or Chapter House Atreides." And these are people that I know that are like hardcore Dune advocates, have read all the books the same way that the same way D has. I don't get that sense from this either. It's better than what little I know of the books, but it still suffers from their books, excuse me. But it still suffers from the same things that I hear other people say when they talk about, having read. They're people that I know that are completionists. They're like, oh, they're new Dune books. I have to read them just to know just so I can close the loop on the whole thing. And they're like, it's cool. You don't have to, but you can. To me, that's not there's no urgency there. Like when I first heard about the first Dune book, a homie of mine read it and was like, you need this in your life. This is one of the most insane things I've ever read. And if you read one, you're probably going to read at least 2 or 3 of the others.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think I was just going to say really quick, Herbert and Dune it's like there are certain writers that only they can write their stuff. And I think that Dune is just that. Mm-hmm. There's no one who can write the Dune universe, or who could have written the Dune universe like Frank Herbert and have that same understanding and that same experience. And that with certainty if you read as far as the God Emperor of Dune, because by that point he's done so much in terms of unconventionalism with mm-hmm. science fiction and continuous storytelling. I mean, between Children of Dune and God Emperor Dune, almost 3,000 years pass, and each book after that is so. By the time you're midway through the series, the Atreides that you knew are no longer alive. So that's the kind of scale and scope that he embedded in his series. For me personally, the final Dune book is Chapter House Dune, which is the last one that he wrote, which is actually a Bene Gesserit story. But beyond that, the others are just fan fiction to me.
And
That's
Dune.
disrespectful, bro.
And with that, we're gonna leave it there. Thank you everybody for listening. We'll be back. You know what it is. And this is Blerdlines, and we are out. Deuces.